Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for inviting me, group. Good to see you all. Hi, my name's Young. I'm a very grateful recovered alcoholic. So grateful to be alive. So grateful for this beautiful spiritual practice. So grateful that I'm not struggling with life anymore. So grateful I stopped picking up alcohol and destroying my life to the ground. And what's just came to mind when we were reading that beautiful reading, thank you, Nicole, for reading that, was a reading from the 12 and 12, actually. And it talks about, it says, self-examination, which I'm in the habit of this self-examination in my step 10 practice, prayer and meditation. On their own, they're very useful things, but used together, they create an unshakable foundation for life. And this has been my experience. And step 11, although we have these very clear-cut directions, these daily practices, that literally is like breathing for me today. For over time, it's just what I do without thinking. At the beginning, it was quite mechanical. And although I have these practices, step 11 for me is just so deep. It's so wide. There's like this spiritual supermarket out there that I can grab, and I can go as deep into my experience as God as I choose. Because I have a choice today. Am I plugging into faith, or am I plugging into fear? And so when I wake up in the morning and I get on my knees and I just say, thank you. My best prayers that I can do, that I can come up with, are the most simple ones. And I like the bit here also where it says, better men than us are using it constantly. And one of my elders, and thank God for the old timers, one of my elders, one of my teachers, she says, Young, every breath is a prayer. I'm breathing in spirit. If I'm really at one with God, if I'm having this experience, then I know that every breath is a prayer. I know that I don't have to go into a church necessarily to pray. I don't have to go into a synagogue to pray or a mosque. It does not matter. It's my intention. Am I feeling the spirit? And I believe, perhaps, if I'm not doing an effective step 10, if I'm not watching for these things, if I'm not awake, perhaps my step 11 practice might just be very mechanical. It might be a tick box exercise. And so step 10 and 11 for me kind of flow into each other. And I could add step 12 to that also. And for me, they deepen my relationship with God. They deepen my experience with this beautiful loving power, which is pure love. I was speaking to a teacher today, my sponsor, and she said to me, this is about pure love, isn't it? God is pure love. And maybe that's why every human perhaps yearns love. Or we think, or I thought I was yearning love. I need love. What I was yearning was God, was spirit. And when I try and find that of another human, I can never get it, because God does for me what no other human can. And at this stage, when I get to step 11, God has removed the alcohol problem. I have become recovered. And now I want to get deeper, because I don't want to rest on my laurels, because I can see the guys that have got a bit further along the path, and I can see the light in their eyes. And then they teach me about their spiritual practice. I don't think we talk enough in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous about how many meetings have you been to when we've talked about morning devotion and group meditation and these beautiful things that I take newcomers to immediately. I take newcomers to these pages immediately. I say, let's get into the habit of doing this nightly review and doing this on awakening. And it's not, and I say, you're not going to get the goal just by jumping to step 11. But what it did for me, it got me in the practice of doing things that I'd never done before. Being humble, getting on my knees, praying when I didn't know what I was praying to. Meditating when my mind was 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it used to be 1,000,000 miles an hour. And now it feels like a whisper, because I've developed a really healthy prayer and meditation life. And so the mechanics of step 11, that retiring at night, I can catch things that I might have missed during the day in my step 10 on the spot inventory. Every day I can see where I've been selfish. Every day I can see that I could do better. And then I end that with a simple prayer. God, Please help me be a better person tomorrow. And there was another bit that jumped out. You know, am I trusting in God now in all areas of my life? This divine power that's removed the alcohol problem. Am I trusting in my work life, in my personal life, in my family life? Because if I'm not trusting and relying upon God, I'm trusting and relying upon that. The very thing that led me to hell. The very thing that tries to put fear into me, that tries to ruin the Garden of Eden inside my heart. The very thing that tries to convince me that something is going to go wrong in my life. I'm still going to trust in that. And sometimes I do, because my self-will is so strong. I'll give you an example. And this was after me doing a lot of prayer, meditation, taking people through the work in the morning. I went to an event, a charity event, and there was like lords and ladies there. And one of my old belief systems is that people who speak better than me, who have more money than me, are better than me. I know it's absolutely false, but it's an old belief system. And I could feel the fear, the doubt, the ego wanting control and convince. Because at that moment, my agnosticism was creeping in. Because if God is everything, why would I be fearful of anything? But my agnosticism was creeping in. And what did I do? I took myself away and I got into prayer. I paused. Like it says in the reading, it's one of my most powerful spiritual practices is pausing. Because it's in the pause that everything is perfect. It's in the moment. It's in this moment right now. If everyone on this call is very present, everything's perfect. Because God's here with us. There's no worry, no anxiety. There is just pure love. And it's in the pause that I'm acknowledging the Spirit. That something stops me. I'll give you an example. I was taking a group today and we were actually doing this reading. And I was about to go on a bit of a rant, a bit of a negative rant about something. God come in and stopped me in the pause. I paused. That wasn't me doing that. Me, my self-will. I wanted to tell them how bad so-and-so and this was. The pause. God stepped in. I breathed. I acknowledged the Spirit. And then what came out after that was God flowing through me. And so I love the mechanics of step 11. I love the mechanics of step 11. I do it every single night without thinking. And then in the morning, on awakening, I'm just asking God, as simple as that, direct my thinking. And this is one of my favourite things in the big book, where it says, we relax, we take it easy, we do not struggle. That's all I have to do. The pain's always in the struggle, because the struggle is me trying to run the show. The struggle is me wanting you to be different than what you've got the power to be, just so I can be comfortable. The struggle is me arguing with reality. And that's when I'm in pain, when I'm arguing with reality. But when I'm acknowledging God, the Spirit, there isn't good or bad. There just is. When I'm fully tuned in, when I'm tuned in to God FM, I can see that there isn't a good or bad. There's just potential learning and there's just experience. And like I've just said on someone that I had a phone call with just now, my best teachers, my best gifts usually don't come wrapped in a lovely box with a gold bow. My best gifts from God usually come in desperation, confusion, pain. And it's only when I can let go and think, okay, what have you got for me? And I always say that in the morning, after I've done my morning review on awakening. I always just say, I say thank you. And I say, okay, God, what have you got for me today? Because I'm thinking about the step 3 prayer when I'm saying, do with me as thou wilt, as whatever you want to do with me today, God, I'm okay. I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to try and struggle and create something that I think, because everything in my past tells me, all my step 5s tell me, whenever I try and create something, I always create a mess or pain or confusion. And so God does for me, like we hear a million times in the room, what I cannot do for myself. Always. Now I've got a little bit of experience that tells me this. So now I can always turn to more towards this loving, caring God. And there's no right or wrong way to pray. This is the thing. My spiritual practice will look different from Scott's, from Barry's, from anyone else's on the call. And that's the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. That I've got these clear-cut directions in the big book, but then we might sing the same song, but we might all have a different melody. You know, we might be all riding on different donkeys, but we're all going to the same place. We're all headed to the same place, whether we like it or not. So I don't say you should do this or you should do that. No. I found my own path. I found my own path. And my path at this moment is different from last year or the year before or the year before, because I know that I've always been a seeker, but I was looking in the wrong place. I was looking in the bottle because that was my God. That was my master. But now, you know, I find these teachers seem to I get attracted to those people. You know, my sponsor, she's a 67-year-old lady in Florida, and I was just attracted to her walk, to her eyes, to her message, something. And I thought, I want that person to be my teacher. I want to learn more. And now she's taking me through this book called Way into the Kingdom. Because now I'm quick to see where religious people are right. Whereas once I would have said, no, not having that. Now my ears are open. Because let's think about this. This beautiful big book, my brokenness, my alcoholism, which led me into hell, which led me into many institutions and to burn my life to the ground because I didn't have any power not to, has been the best gift I've ever given, because it's been the doorway. Through my brokenness, I can let in bits of sunlight. Through my brokenness, that was the only reason I became a seeker in God, in spirit, in power. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't so broken. And now I can go deeper, where it says, be quick to see where religious people are right. Okay, I can only speak for myself. I've said this many times in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's true. We're a spiritual program, not a religious one. And then I started looking at that and thinking, I don't know anything about religions. Let's have a look at some of them. And I don't have to agree with some of the stuff, but we've only been doing this stuff since the 1930s. These religions or other spiritual practices have been doing it for thousands of years. I'd have to be a fool not to investigate if I want to get a bit deeper on this spiritual path, if I want to stay awake. I keep on going through transformation. I feel like I'm having another awakening. I really do. This is the beautiful thing for me about this program. It's not a one-time deal. And I remember my first sponsor at the beginning of this journey. He said, Young, do you want your recovery to be middle of the road? Or do you want to be rocketed into this fourth dimension of existence? And this is where I exist today. This place of deep peace. This place where I know I'm perfectly imperfect. This place where I make a lot of mistakes and I can put my hand up and say, I'm just a normal, flawed human being on this path, making mistakes, being human, and that's absolutely all right. Because I used to beat myself up for those mistakes, but I know it's God placing lessons in my path if I'm awake to them. And I have to ask myself each day, how much time am I spending with this beautiful, loving power that's removed the alcohol problem? How much time am I spending? Am I able to see the spiritual breadcrumbs that are laid at my feet every single day? It depends on how awake I am. I'll give you an example of a spiritual breadcrumb. It's a bit of a stupid example, but it meant a lot to me in the moment. I went into a fish and chip shop in Scarborough, and it was really old and beautiful. And I said to the lady, she was quite an elderly lady, I said, you've got a beautiful shop. How long have you been here? And she said, I've been here for 45 years. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And she said, I'll just keep on doing it until I get better. And in that moment, the spiritual breadcrumb for me was humility. This lady showed me what humility looked like, showed me what I don't live up to, which I would love what this lady has. And I was able to see it. If I wasn't awake, I would have just seen it as just a normal everyday comment. But God presents these things to me when I'm awake, when I'm willing. And when it talks about the proper attitude, it talks about prayer, meditation, and like I say, no right or wrong way to pray or meditate. One of my favourite prayers, whatever. One of my favourite prayers. The proper attitude. What's the proper attitude for me? It's being honest, open-mindedness, praying with intention and love in my heart, and willingness to search within my soul. For me, that's the right attitude. For me. Only today. Maybe tomorrow I'll think differently. Maybe next year I'll disagree with what I'm saying. But this is just where I am today. That's what I love about this program. It's not rigid. There's so much room for maneuver after I do, chop wood and carry water. And don't get me wrong. This beautiful big book is like my meat and two veg. I follow the directions, but I'm not rigid. I'm not rigid. I try and be like bamboo. I seek more spiritual literature. The spiritual literature that I read in the morning at the moment is from the 13th century. Me, someone like me reading, I can't believe it. This book almost jumped out on me. This guy called Meister Eckhart from the first, and I opened it up. It was in this like dusty old bookshop, and it just jumped out at me. And I opened it up, and the first thing I looked, he said, yeah, God is within. And I thought, wow. And then all the rest of the stuff and all the spiritual literature that I read is all tied in for me into the 12 steps, into our spiritual principles. And I think every religion at the basis, be kind, help your neighbour, be courageous. All these things that are our principles in the 12 steps. How beautiful is that? I know my time's coming up. I love it where it says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. And I have to ask myself, and I will do it at the end of this night, how many times did I pause today? Was I just running through life? Was I spending a lot of time in the pause? So that's what a question I'll ask myself tonight. And then it says, I constantly remind myself I'm no longer running the show. I was never running the show. I never will be running the show. How do I know that? Unless I take my own life, which I'm not going to. I don't get to choose when I take my last breath. That's how I know I'm not running the show. And in the same way, in more about alcoholism, where it says, I had to concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. I had to concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic. This unconditional surrender. Unconditional surrender. In the same way as that, when I concede to my innermost self that I am no longer running the show, I am surrendering to life itself. It's the difference between me lying down in a river with the current flowing down and letting myself flow down. Okay, life. And me, I'm trying to, I want to go this way looks better. No, okay. Because I trust in God today. I trust in infinite God. Because I've seen what he's done for me, or actually it's no gender for me, but that's where I come from. I see what this power does. I'm experiencing this power. I can't explain this power, but I'm experiencing it today. And to think, I only came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because I wanted to stop drinking. And what's been shown to me is something I could have never, when people say, and I'll end on this, a life beyond my wildest dreams. I used to hate people saying that when, oh boy, I don't hate anything today, hopefully. The word was beyond this. I can only come up with some such and such because I've only got human intelligence, but this is beyond, this is divine. And the more I seek, the more I experience. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.